Hey, do you know what it's called when a group of rabbits is walking backwards?
Hi there. This week's video is brought to you by this picture I took of two birds of paradise flowers that live right outside the building where I work. And I see these almost every day, but something about them this one day I passed by and I immediately saw them differently. They just look like two little characters that I needed to draw. And I knew immediately what I was going to turn them into. As you can see, I made them little reindeer. For several years now, I've been wanting to create a Christmas illustration to go in our downstairs bathroom where all of our pastel and retro feeling Christmas decorations live. And I never really knew what to do until this year, until I saw those birds of paradise and I saw them as reindeer. And I also wanted to try my hand at lettering for an illustration. So as you can see, I chose the phrase from the Deck the Halls song, "Don we now our gay apparel." So these reindeer have their fancy scarves and Christmas decor on. And here you can see, I've watched a lot of tutorials and taken a lot of classes on how to do lettering in illustration. And almost all of them use some sort of guide to make sure that the letters are all on the same line and everything. And so I am trying that, but I have to tell you, this illustration, this took me so much longer than I really wanted it to. And maybe that's because this type of illustration where I add lettering is still newer to me. It's not something that I'm really practiced in, so it's a lot of trial and error. And I cut a lot of footage out because it's just me doing these letters over and over again till I finally get them to a point where I like them. After going over the lettering several 100,000 times, I decided to take a break from it and instead focus on the rest of the illustration. After getting the basic illustration shapes and colors down, it's time to go back and play around with the lettering some more. When I tell you I was so frustrated with the lettering by this point, I had to stop again and focus on something else. So here I am refining the reindeer, getting rid of those really crisp edges. I wanted it to feel more sketchy, more textured. So that's what I'm doing now. And here we are back to the lettering. As you can see, I got rid of the guidelines and I just thought, I'm just going to try and do it without them and see what happens. It is now the next day, and after letting it sit for a bit, sometimes you have to walk away from your art. If you're working on a piece and you're finding yourself really frustrated and you're just mad at it or mad at yourself, or you just don't want to look at it anymore, don't. Walk away. Let it sit there for a day or two or a week, or maybe even sometimes a month or two. Then when you come back with fresh eyes, very often you'll find that either A, it wasn't as bad as you remember or thought it was, or B, you're going to look at it and know exactly what to do. So here I opened it up again and I thought, you know what it was? It just felt too confined. It felt like the lettering was just too restricted to a guideline. So instead, I decided to use the scarf as the guideline. I did give myself little top and bottom stops and starts just so that it does feel like all of the letters are on the same plane. But this felt so much better doing the lettering this way. It actually felt fun again, and I was enjoying myself, and it became kind of a meditative practice of just going along and adding the little flourishes and coloring each letter in one at a time. I had such a hard time figuring out how to fit the words hour and gay on the scarf. So the way I approached it was I eventually just ended up writing it in backwards. And, eventually I got there. I got to a place where I was happy with the way it looked. But what do you guys do? How do you approach things like this? When you're doing a lettering project, would that be the first thing you focus on? Do you put the letters on first, or do you do the illustration and then try to fit the lettering in? Did I do this the wrong way? Here I used a mask instead of a clipping mask, or even just erasing the parts of the scarf and the lettering to let the ears come forward. And I did that so that I actually didn't ruin either of those layers. When you use a mask, you add the mask to the layer, and then when you go over it with black, it essentially takes the color away so you can see what's below that layer. And then if you go over it with white, pure white, it puts it back in. So that way you don't actually destroy any part of that layer. But now I'm just adding shadows and highlights just to kind of finish off the piece and make it feel a little bit more refined. At this point, I thought I was done with it, but I wasn't. I came back a couple days later and decided it didn't feel finished to me, and then I worked on it off camera. But thankfully, Procreate does this little thing where it records everything you do and plays it back in a time lapse. So here's a time lapse of me working on, I just added a couple little bell necklaces with some holly and an ornament. And here's the finished piece. And it lives happily now in my bathroom.
A receding hairline.
Okay, thanks, bye.